Hey, everybody. Welcome to Away Games, a Chicago Cubs podcast and baseball podcast hosted by two comedians from Chicago who live in New York and love the Cubs. And we are in closer physical proximity than we've been in quite a long time. Not in the same room, don't worry. But I am Adam Mamawala. I am one of the hosts. And I'm here with Kevin McCaffrey, just a mile or two away. How's it going, man?
I know. I wonder if people can feel the physical intimacy that we now have. That the season has begun. We're taking the away games and making it less away. And yeah, we're both in Queens right now. 1 week into the season, and I'm fucking psyched that this is there's actually baseball happening to talk about.
It's fantastic. We have now re-entered the phase of the season where you all get to guess who's tweeting what during games. It's always a good time.
At Away Games Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Please do follow us there. Adam and I do simultaneously live tweet most of the games from one account, and yeah. You can,
but I would say in our experience over the past 2 or 3 years of doing that, we generally have the same viewpoint on most things, baseball-wise and otherwise.
Right. We don't wildly disagree. I think we're different people, so there's tonal differences with our tweets, and people have talked about enjoying playing the guessing game, who's saying what. But yeah, we've been tweeting up a storm this week.
We certainly have, and obviously it's a very bizarre season. But hey, when you look at where the Cubs are at right now, we're recording this early Wednesday morning. 4-1, hell of a lot better start than last year.
Well, and if the season gets shortened by COVID stuff, as we know, apparently they're not going to worry about getting every team to 60 games. So if teams can't play all the games, they're going to be seeded in the playoffs based on winning percentage. So shut it down. We could shut it down now. Take an 800 winning percentage into the rest of the year. That's a
yeah. I mean, look, I don't. I'm not a big math guy, but I believe in a full 60 game season, the Cubs would be on pace for a 48-12 record. So that's pretty good.
That is pretty good. And yeah, that is, if for people who are new to the podcast, there's obviously several other Cubs podcasts out there that are very fun and good too. We're not math guys. Adam is we're not the mathiest guys of the Cubs podcasts out there. But yes, that is 4-1 is, I mean, that is, I am extremely happy with where the Cubs are at right now. And I guess mostly with how they've looked overall too.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I saw a tweet from somebody yesterday. I wish I could remember who, but basically saying even if the Cubs play 500 ball the rest of the way in a world where there's a full 60 game season, they still already probably have a fairly good shot at the playoffs just by having come out of the gate 4-1 with 16 teams going.
Yes, and with the expanded playoffs that are out there too, which I guess is also a new development since we last aired a podcast.
Right. Yeah, I mean, so we've gone one trip through the rotation, and pretty much it's been a great trip through the rotation other than Darvish struggling. I mean, everybody else has really looked solid.
Yeah, Darvish struggled. It was the thing where the results weren't as bad even as it kind of looked. It just looked like he didn't know where the ball was going at any point. He had a time where he struck out the side, and he looked pissed off about it because it seemed like he really just couldn't get a handle on where the ball was going. But and he also had a rough last exhibition start too, so it's a little concerning to see that Darvish does not appear to be, he's not second half Darvish, but it looks a lot like first half Darvish is the thing last year. But hopefully he gets that turned around in a couple days here. Everyone else looks as good as you could possibly hope for. I mean,
well, Hendricks looked as good as he's ever looked in any game we've ever watched. And there's a pretty high standard for the kind of bar that he set for himself.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the complete game shutout and beyond complete game shutout, that was a time where the stats matched what you saw because everything looked sharp. I mean, as dominant as a guy who throws up to 89 can be, but he was throwing 89, which isn't nothing because in recent years, we know Hendricks has come out in that first game throwing sometimes 85, 86 with his four seamers. So the velocity is great for him. The curveball looked really good. He sort of bailed on it after the first half of the game, but he struck out a few dudes with it. The curveball looks really tight and is moving east-west and north-south. And the changeup is what the changeup has always been. And a complete game shutout. And you look around the rest of the league, and starting pitchers going down with injuries a lot already, and no one's going deep into these games. So there was a day earlier, I think it was 2 days ago, where no pitcher in the league went over 5 innings. So when you get Hendricks, who did double that for you, basically, it's a luxury.
Right, and then you couple that with the fact that both Chatwood and Mills went 6. I mean, that's incredible for not even for what we expected from them, but just for anybody's first round of through the rotation in this shortened year.
Yeah, and Chatwood looked dominant, and Mills gave up 2 runs, and really he pitched better than what the line looked like, because he just had 1 walk on a questionable ball 4 call, and the next hitter was our formerly good friend Nick Castellanos, who took him out the opposite way. And other than that, Mills was tight. I mean, nothing. He has 5 pitches that he uses that all have different velocities, to the point where he's throwing that curveball in the mid upper 60s and seems to have confidence throwing it up there that slow. And he was cruising. And then Lester went 5 innings, but they were 5 no-hit innings. So, I mean, really, right. You can't ask for much more. If Darvish gets
and he would have gone 6 if not for misplaying a ball hit right to him.
Yes, exactly. Which it is a little weird. We all know Lester's throwing to the bases thing. It's weird that extends to not knowing how to catch a ball too, but it does,
My guess would be, in that particular case, as soon as he sees the ball coming towards him, he's already thinking about like, oh, how am I going to shovel this over to first? And then
right.
In the way that an infielder will get ahead of themselves and misplay a ball. But yeah, I mean, I have no issues with how Lester threw the ball at all. I mean, I think obviously I'm not going on too much of a limb here. The bullpen is the trouble area right now. The game in Cincinnati on Monday was, I guess, we always talk about like, I'm glad I still care.
Yeah.
We're 4 games into a season that I'm not even sure will end. And as I'm watching that, my stomach hurts.
Yes, I realized I was clenching my teeth really hard. I do have a bite guard. As I'm recording from my bedroom right now, I have a bite guard that I should wear more frequently, but it's for sleep. But maybe I should.
Maybe it's for Kimbrel.
It might be for Kimbrel now. Yeah. I have a joke about Craig Kimbrel, but it's unplayable. That was a meme this week. Yeah, that was so tense. And there are, God, if the other team is lighting up your pitchers, it's frustrating. It sucks for sure, but it doesn't make me as insane as when your team has a lead and can't stop walking guys.
Yep.
It makes me crazy. And that's, I think it makes everyone crazy. And the bullpen right now, it's like, we know the Cubs took a sort of approach to their bullpen where they just signed a bunch of dudes with spin rates and stuff that they believed they could get into the quote unquote pitch lab and do stuff with. And it seems like what they have is what they paid for, and maybe there'll be more improvement there. But it seems like what we have right now is a bunch of guys who mostly you can dream on being solid middle relievers,
Right.
Like you see Ryan Tepera, he looks decent. Casey Sadler looks decent.
Mm-hmm.
But these aren't guys who you feel super comfortable throwing out there in the ninth. Jeremy Jeffress came in, and with a little help from, I believe it was Phillip Ervin swinging at a ball that was trying to kiss him, he got out of it. He did what he needed to do, but still Jeffress is a couple of velocity ticks below too. And I think he's a guy you feel relatively good about in the pen, but also it's that 9th inning is going to be tricky, I think.
Yeah. And not to mention the fact that, and I don't blame him for not getting drilled with a fastball, but if Joey Votto just hangs in and takes a ball in the arm, he's just tied the game. So, and also he rips that ball to center. I mean, Almora made the play, but, I have grave concerns about the bullpen, and I think we all alluded to the fact when we did our season preview that none of us had a lot of faith in Kimbrel. And I know one of my predictions was Rowan Wick is closing games by mid-August, and we might not even get to August before that starts happening. He was warming up last night to come in the game. Now, that's because Kimbrel threw 35 pitches. I'm sure he still has the job, but
I think Kimbrel has the job in a season like this. My assumption is Kimbrel has the job for 1 to 2 more tries. I mean, I think one more try like we just saw and he's out. At that point, you can't really justify putting him in with a lead in a tight game. And I mean, you could make the argument that you can't even do that right now, that you maybe should be getting him garbage innings until he finds whatever it is he needs to find to get it over the plate. But it's a thing where in our season preview, we talked about how Kimbrel losing 2 ticks off the fastball and throwing only 96 makes him extremely hittable, turns out. Well, also, there were, as I think our friend over at Cubs Prospects, our friend Brian pointed out, 15 curveballs, and they didn't swing at one of them. The Reds didn't. So it seems like clearly there's something that is letting hitters know right out of the hand whether it's a fastball or curveball. So that's a mess. And then it's just, obviously it's the command, and it just seems like the guy is in his head to a crazy degree. And this sounds like corny sports talk radio, mysticism. But as soon as I saw Kimbrel on the mound, the way he was doing his chicken wing thing, where he hangs the arm out to the side, I swear to God, at the right off the bat, it looked like he felt embarrassed about it to me. It looked like he was half-hearting it. And do you know what I mean?
Well, it's something. Yeah, it's something that only isn't lame if you're nasty. And then once you're not anymore, it's like, what are you doing?
Yes, exactly.
But I was thinking when you're talking about like them either knowing his curveball's coming or just deciding not to swing it at curveballs. Imagine if all along he's been like the most obvious pitch tipper ever. Like when he hangs his arm, he holds down 2 fingers for a curveball and 1 for a
He's just giving the catcher signal straight to the and meanwhile everyone's just like, we can't figure it out. We don't know. He's just we get to zoom in on his mouth and he's just mouthing fastball, fastball, fastball.
Maybe he needs cardboard people doing his arm thing behind home plate to get him in the mood.
I mean, let's try it, because it's as soon as I saw him out there, it's like, it feels like he's not buying himself right now, and we are 2 comedians hosting a baseball podcast. Adam, when you go out, if you're going to perform a bit that is particularly silly, like, you have to fucking commit to it. There's nothing worse than if you're doing like a silly bit that you're half-hearting and bombing. It's like, you can't. And that's what it felt like he was doing with the arm thing. It's like, he doesn't believe he's nasty right now.
Yeah, and what was really unfortunate about it was the perfect situation for him to come out and get some confidence, because you're bringing him in with a 3-run lead. It's not like they brought him into some really tough spot with the tied game or with a 1-run lead. It was ideally, or it was, theoretically like, oh, this is going to be a good way to like ease him in, get him some confidence. Even if he gives up a home run or something, he'll still get the save, leave with his head high. And I know you were tweeting about it. I think everybody agreed. Like, he clearly had a pretty long leash in terms of how long Rossi left him in the game. And I realize that Kimbrel is one of the great closers of our generation, but he has not been that for this team. He wasn't that for the Red Sox, even though he didn't technically blow a game in that 2018 playoffs. Like, right. I'm not saying he's done, but I am saying that he's not the elite closer he's been for at least a couple of years now.
Yeah, it's weird because he's not old. He's 32 and arguably the most dominant closer of all time. The guy has more saves than hits allowed in his career, which is just one of my favorite insane stats. But he's 32, but you're also right. He wasn't that Kimbrel. I mean, we haven't seen him be that Kimbrel. Even back to spring training, he was giving up taters everywhere. So this year, in the limited time we've seen him, he wasn't last year, and last year was weird, without any sort of spring training for him. But also, in the playoffs and towards the end of that final year with Boston. So we're going on almost 2 years removed from Kimbrel being Kimbrel. So that's tough. And one of my predictions was that Kimbrel would be basically fine, and that feels stupid right now. It looks like, man, it really wasn't fine. But this, but I think it is worth giving him, I would say, I'm fine with giving him one more save opportunity. And I think that's about it. Like one more, and you can't blow it like he did just now. Otherwise, you got to shuffle him to the middle innings to see if he can figure something out.
Well, I think what becomes tough about it, and I agree. I mean, he is an elite closer, even if he doesn't look like it now. And he's not the sort of person that you pay that kind of money to with that kind of name, and then he pitches poorly his first outing, and you say, "All right, you're pitching the seventh from now on." So he does deserve that. But one of my concerns with this shortened season is, like, let's say the Cubs blow that game, right? Super demoralizing. They were up 8-1 in the 6th, 7th inning.
Yeah.
You don't know what kind of effect that can have on a team. And if that sends you into even like a mini tailspin where you lose the next couple of games because you're still thinking about the previous one, maybe instead of 4-1, they're 2-3 right now. You don't know how much that sort of thing has an impact.
Oh, and it's a couple of games, but what a massive difference in feeling that is. In feeling and stats. I mean, just in terms of like actual difference in the standings and how that affects you. It's hugely different. I think that's obviously the place we're most worried about. And I think the bullpen could get weird, and maybe weird in a fun way, where we could see the Cubs' second round pick from this year, Burl Carraway, coming up to being in that bullpen. We could see top prospect Braylon Marquez added to that bullpen. Possibly.
Was Carraway on the taxi squad?
Yeah, he has been brought up to South Bend now. Yes. Okay. So I mean, it could get weird and interesting there. Otherwise, it's, as we said, Tepera and Sadler are new guys who look decent. Jeffress looks decent. Rowanwick, I think he looks basically the same as we remember. Bradwick had health issues earlier in the year, and his velocity is just kind of weirdly not there. Is down 3 or 4 miles an hour, and he is so he's taken a bit of a break right now. Kyle Ryan continues to be just about a guy you just count on, who comes in and gets weird ground balls.
Yeah, it seems like all he does is get clutch double play ground balls, and I mean, Chris Bryant made a really nice play on that one against Milwaukee over the weekend. But that is one prediction I would be happy to be wrong about, is Ryan regressing a bit. Yeah. But I mean, when you think about it right now, other than, I would say, really Kyle Ryan and Rowan Wick. There's nobody that I feel completely good about bringing in right now.
No.
Is that an exaggeration?
No, I don't think so. I mean, if you're talking a 1-run lead in the 9th, I mean, it's hard to feel safe, I guess, ever with that. But it's weird to say when arguably the best closer in history is sitting in your bullpen, but I mean, it doesn't feel like there's like a Wade Davis back there, It doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like anyone can come in and just blow the doors off a team in one inning right now.
Yeah, because when Wade Davis and Chapman threw way too many pitches, it was usually in a heroic way, not in a I can't get someone out way.
Yes, exactly. And it's just such a weird thing where the ball is just going absolutely everywhere.
You can tell he has no idea where it's going. Now, the question I would have for you is, I think you're right. If he comes in and blows another game, especially if he comes in with a 3-run lead again and can't get anybody out, then I think you're already talking about we have to make a change here. Let's say, tonight the Cubs have a 1-run lead. They bring in Kimbrel. He gets the first 2 guys out, and then he just starts losing it, and he walks the bases loaded. You're David Ross. Do you leave him in, knowing that he could walk the tying run in, or do you yank him and say he just walked 3 guys and it's somebody else's game now?
I think you have to yank him if he's walking everybody, because that's a different problem than guys get hit. That happens. But if you can't count on where the ball is going in any way, you have to bring in someone who's just competent and who's going to get the ball over the plate. And that's what Ross, to his credit, even if he made the move a little late, he did with Jeremy Jeffress. And Jeffress came in and, by the skin of his teeth, got it done.
Yeah, I am relieved that the Cubs can still make me sick to my stomach.
Yeah, we still care. That's great. We care a lot. And as we talk about the bullpen there, we touched on the rotation. Obviously, that's going great. Everything besides the bullpen is going pretty good. The lineup is also fun. How are you enjoying the beginning of the DH era over here?
Well, I always felt, as much as I'm somebody who is kind of romantic about not having the DH in the NL, that was something that was always going to benefit the Cubs because they just had a good and deep lineup and didn't have enough room to play everybody. So we're seeing the benefits of being able to have guys like both, Bodie and Horner in the lineup, or that sort of combination where it's like somebody who certainly would have been on the bench. Not to mention the fact that the Cubs pitchers are terrible hitters. I mean, like,
yes,
Kyle Hendricks, Quintana might be the worst hitting pitcher I've ever seen.
yes,
Hendricks,
no idea.
Hendricks also bad. Darvish can't really hit. I mean, Lester will barrel one up every now and again, but the point is,
right.
like,
Chatwood can rake.
Chatwood can rake for sure, but it's not like any NL team was like super stoked to have their pitchers hit. But the Cubs, specifically, don't have good hitting pitchers.
Yes.
So I think you can see the benefits of it already, and I mean, the Cubs are certainly scoring more runs on average in this small 5-game sample size than they did last year with any consistency. This is 3 straight games now of 8 runs.
Yeah. And I think exactly like you said, where you can have a game where you can play Bodie and Horner and Kipnis, Caratini and Contreras. The Cubs are lucky to have some positional overlap here with a couple of guys who can hit. And like we said before the season started, for all the talk, as soon as the DH happens, everyone in national media certainly is like, oh, Schwarber DH, which is weirdly like, I don't want to say body shaming, but it's stereotype. I think it's stereotyping based on how Kyle Schwarber looks, because he's
thick, man. Let him live.
And he runs well. He made a good play yesterday. He's he's like an average defensive left fielder. So there's really nothing besides the fact that he's thick that makes him super DH-y. And we said before the season started that most of the best versions of this lineup don't involve Schwarber at DH. And to Ross's credit, I think Schwarber's only DH once or twice, maybe, thus far. Yeah. It's mainly been DHing one of the 2 catchers, and they've both been killing them.
And that's I think maybe the bigger advantage for the Cubs than anything is that Victor Caratini is a starting catcher for, I would say, a good chunk of teams. He's a very good player. So to have 2 catchers of that caliber and be able to have them both in the lineup pretty much every day is huge.
Yeah, and it makes you feel like even long term that you have less reason to get rid of either of them, which is great because it did seem like there was almost too much redundancy there. If they're both going to be healthy, you almost, you could say owe it to them, but like you almost had to deal somebody because Caratini could be starting for at least 10 teams and probably more than that. He's a very good framer. He was a good framer before framing wizard Craig Driver showed up. And I mean, what a job he's done with Contreras, and what a job Contreras has done on his own too this year.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, that's one of the best developments we've seen.
Yeah, he's looked incredible behind the plate. I mean, speak to that a little bit, because I know that's something that you've been talking about for a couple of years with Contreras.
Yeah, so Craig Driver is a coach that was hired from Philadelphia, and I believe he's coaching first base now. He's also one of the catching instructors. They have Mike Borzello working with the catchers as well, as he has for years. And now you got a catcher as a manager too. So you got a lot of catching brains back there. But Craig Driver, what he has done specifically in Philadelphia, Jorge Alfaro working with him, went from a middling to below average framer to top 10, I think. I think he was ranked like 7th in framing overall. And then JT Realmuto also improved a lot demonstrably, statistically, after working with Driver. And then Contreras, as of yesterday, adding his framing in, was the most valuable catcher in baseball through 5 games. But the framing itself is a huge turnaround. And if you add if you add decent framing into what Wilson Contreras' game is, you have an MVP candidate. And it looks like we've added, so far it looks elite. He's stealing strikes from everywhere. And the main thing we're seeing is that Wilson is working his way up to the ball with everything. He's as he receives it, he's working his way up and slightly, if it's on the outside of the plate, up and slightly in. But really, you see him almost in an exaggerated way working his hand up and through the ball into the zone in a way that's different than what we've seen him do before. And he's getting calls.
Well, exactly. And you think about how elite his other catching skills are. If he even got to the point where he becomes an average framer, he's already one of the best catchers in baseball with the kind of arm he has, with the kind of, it seems to me that he blocks the ball very well just because of how active he is behind the plate. It's been really cool to see. And really offensively, the only people that really give me any pause are kind of the people that we expected to. Like, I love the guy, and running out with the Chicago flag is one of my favorite things so far from this season. But man alive, if we could have a designated fielder, Hayward would be that guy. It's just, it seems like it's the same thing that it's been, which is like a 4-3 ground out every time he's up there.
Every time, and then until yesterday, where he started hitting the ball the opposite way a little bit, had a hit, and took one to the warning track and left. But yeah, I think, it doesn't do anyone any favors to pretend Jason Hayward is someone who he hasn't been for 5 years now at this point. Like, and that's something people who've listened to us before have heard us talk about, where it's, we're all fans of the guy. Love to watch him play defense. These are great.
He's not a 6-hole hitter, though. He's just
God, no. He should be hitting 8th, and that's it in this lineup. I mean, there's really we saw that happen in I forget which game it was, but when Hayward's coming up with the bases loaded, when the guys behind him in the lineup are all better. I mean, it's just, the guy is not a good hitter, and you can tell me all you want about, well, yes, but when not hitting leadoff and facing right-handers who aren't of particularly high velocity, then he's a slightly above average hitter sometimes. It's like, okay, we're talking about actually Major League Baseball players on a regular basis. And if we want to, what you're telling me, we're Jason Hayward supporters. I don't want to even say what supporters tell us, but kind of Jason Hayward offensive apologists want to say, even what they're saying is, okay, well, he's a platoon bat at best. So, I think that, but we just know what's going to happen with that. It would be wild if Jason Hayward became 2015 Jason Hayward again. It's 5 years. That's just not him.
Right. And again, he's incredible defensively. He's an excellent teammate, and from every indication, an incredible guy. But I think if you look at him, let's say he plays just average defense, there's really almost no justification for having him in the lineup if he's that guy.
No, I think we're going to end up doing what you saw the Cubs do towards the end of 2016, was you're going to have to start putting lineups in where he is not in the starting lineup. If you're going to play your best 9, and this is including a DH, and I think having a DH is something that probably helps Hayward ultimately get more playing time too. But I think towards the end of this year, you're going to see Chris Bryant. And by the way, Chris Bryant has not looked good offensively either. He's dealing with a shoulder issue is part of it too. But also he's been whiffing. To my count, he just completely whiffed 7 fastballs belt high middle of the plate so far. Like, not even foul balls. Been kind
of flailing, and you can tell he's really frustrated.
Yes, and he's down for a couple of days. He has a shoulder issue, and hopefully, or shoulder elbow. I can't. I
think it's shoulder.
And one thing I hope is that the Cubs don't do the thing that they've done for the past few years, where they just have a guy play through an injury and therefore be worse for a long time before they ever think about using the injured list. Like, this is a time with the DH where the Cubs do could cover for Bryant for a little bit. We just need to get him actually right. But I think towards the end of the year, with the roster construction we have, I think you're going to see Chris Bryant in right field a lot. And you'll see Chris Bryant in the outfield. You'll see David Bodie at third, and one of the second basemen who've all been great. All 3 of those guys who play second base have been great so far. So,
yeah, but I think the thing that you always have to grapple with is, in my mind, anytime the Cubs have a lead and they have the ability to have Hayward and Almora in the outfield late in the game is huge, because we saw what happens when you don't have that person out there. Steven Souza cost the Cubs 2 runs by breaking back on a ball that he should have caught, and the Reds scored 2 runs on that play. Like, if you have a Souza or a Bryant or even like a Happ in center field, you're going to have some of those moments. And we saw some of that last year. I remember that awful game against the Phillies that Harper hit the grand slam. There were a series of plays that were like, if we had the proper guys in their positions, like if we had Javi where he was supposed to be or whatever it was, the game already would have been over. So I feel like that's always a tough thing for a manager to try to figure out, is like, well, we want the best guys offensively so we can get a lead. But then once we have it, if we do, then we need to make sure we're protecting it.
Yeah, and I think that's I think towards the end of the year, that's probably what we're going to end up seeing a lot more of, is those defensive guys being used as defensive guys, late game, 7th inning and later defensive replacements, which it seems like is what Almora is being used as right now, which is the appropriate usage of him at this time. It would be nice to see that bat come around and do anything, but yeah, right now I think that you are using him as a defensive replacement, and Hayward's Hayward, but I think there's a good chance as we go later in the season he might be a guy coming off the bench to lock it down defensively too. But yeah, I mean, everyone else looks great. Rizzo looks great, and there's some fun little thing from last night where David Bodie said Rizzo always has a message for Javi Baez before Baez's first at bat of the game, telling him, do that thing the fans love. Which is like, all right, wait, I mean, it could be any number of things from Javi, but yeah, and it seems like we've also seen quotes from the team that Rizzo has particularly been doing a good job keeping the energy up, and Tom Brenneman of all people was commenting on the Reds broadcast that about how energetic and how vocal the Cubs bench was. Like, all the crowd noise this series in Cincinnati has been the Cubs bench just talking, just, cheering and yelling. And I didn't hear the Reds bench at all.
Yeah. And you know what? It kind of reminds me of high school sports. Like,
absolutely.
I keep thinking about that because I remember, playing tennis matches in high school where it's like nobody gives a shit about high school tennis. So the only people watching are your own teams. And that also could get in your head. Like, if you were playing a team that like was kind of a jerky team and they were yelling stuff at you or being, heckling a little bit, like it would get to you. So I wonder, I think it's going to make things a little chippier probably, as we already saw this weekend with Milwaukee, where you can hear everything that people are saying to you in a way that you never could have before.
Yeah, and there was a bit of Amir Garrett had a quick, like a brief little exchange with the Cubs bench, it seemed like, for that, the same thing. It's like when you can hear everything the other guys are saying, there's going to be more conflict. There's more to get upset about. And what Javi said, Javi talking about the fun the Cubs are having, he said that, quote, that's been a big thing here in that clubhouse. We're having more fun than anything. I think Rizzo has been crazy, trying to make us be together, and it's working. And that's very, very cool.
Oh man, I really love this team, and I really love them a lot in this moment, and it continues to make me afraid that it's going to get ripped away from us at some point.
I know, we're going to go 15-2, and they're going to be like, well, every Marlin has it, has COVID. God.
Well, because think about last year, how you felt that first week, like when the Cubs were whatever they were, 1-6, 2-7. It's like, if they had at that point been like, we have to call off the season, even if there had been no reason, a lot of us would have been like, that probably makes sense. Yeah,
we could take a break. Well, who needs it? It seems like, as we talked about last week on the preview, will the season actually make it to the end? And I was saying it seems like they've just decided it will, no matter what. And I mean, I guess I feel more like that now, but it feels like the season's more in jeopardy for sure. I think last I saw there were 15 Marlins who tested positive, and the Marlins we're just suspending one of the teams for the week, which you have to do, but also it's just like, well, what is the league then if teams are basically being contracted during the year? And also it's a thing where there is no reason that you can tell me that base runners and infielders should not be wearing masks during the game at all time. 15 Marlins caught it. Guys, this is real. It's a real thing. It's droplet based as far as we know. And also, Cubs, stop high-fiving each other. Like,
I know.
you're not supposed to be doing this. And that's something, that Ross, I think, specifically needs to get a better handle on. He said the first game where he said, I know we're not supposed to, but gave Kyle a big bear hug when he came off the mound. Don't hug my ace. Stop it. I know it sucks and it's weird, but this is how stuff spreads, is when you're not, and the Cubs, to their credit, are the only team that have not had a player test positive. Knock on wood.
But it's a matter of time. I mean, let's be honest. It's going to happen. And I don't know if you saw, unfortunately, in Madden's managerial debut for the Angels, they got walked off on a grand slam for Matt Olson. And the celebration looked like any other celebration you would see in a normal year. And I realize that it's very weird to like all stand 6 feet apart and jump around when somebody hits a walk-off grand slam on opening day. I totally get it. But I just want someone to explain to them, like, if we don't follow these rules, we might not get to finish this season. So I know it sucks to pull your mask over your face when you're at first base or even in the dugout. Yeah. But it's not asking that much of you. It's kind of a microcosm of the rest of the country, really. Mm-hmm. It's like, just do this small thing that will probably help you not get sick.
Yeah, I mean, God, we're in the middle of a pandemic that you can beat by being a combination of like basically competent and then just polite and considerate of others. So it's really the perfect killer for America, I think, right now, because boy, are those two things we suck at in this moment. So yeah, I mean, it drives me nuts. When really you've seen Chris Bryant at first wearing a mask on the base paths. And you've seen, I believe I saw Rizzo with it at one point, but then I also saw Rizzo without it. And he's like, and
he loves to talk to everybody.
Yeah. I know. And it's like, you can't, I love the hand sanitizer bit. Great stuff over there at first. But yeah, you cannot be talking to people. And he was talking to Votto, who was just in a clubhouse with Senzel and Moustakas, guys who had to sit out for flu-like symptoms. And Rizzo and Votto were talking from a foot away from each other. You just can't. This is stupid. You can't be doing that. You cannot. We really need, the infielders have to mask up. And it sucks, but if Francisco Lindor can do it while he's playing shortstop, everyone can do it. So, yeah. And it feels like, it feels, especially since the Cubs are doing well thus far, it does feel tenuous and like, when are they going to take this from us? Because it's been such a nice week watching baseball. It's been
a great week, and I think my attitude with everything this year, whether it's baseball or even like the mundane things in life, is like, the baseline is that everything sucks all the time right now, but I'm trying to at least let myself enjoy things in the moment without getting too caught up in like, it's all going to get ruined eventually anyway. Like, right. I'm really trying to actively appreciate whatever amount of baseball I can watch right now, because I don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. And I want to be grateful for it. But yeah, I think the other thing that we keep forgetting is that, the whole system is, as long as there's people have, whatever the system is, like when people have negative tests, they can play again, I assume is something to that effect.
You got to have a couple consecutive tests. Yeah.
But all of this presumes a situation in which nobody has like really serious effects of COVID. And one of the things that I keep worrying about, and I know this is a little bleak, is that like, let's say they play the full baseball season and this keeps happening, hopefully to a lesser extent, where guys on teams test positive, they sit out for a week or whatever, and then they come back. If this keeps happening and everybody comes back and they're perfectly fine, doesn't it in a weird way kind of reinforce the idea that most younger people have in this country that like, it's not going to affect me?
Yeah. Well, I mean, people are
not that I want it to be bad for someone, but you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. People are certainly going to take it that way. And I mean, you could also ask Freddie Freeman how it went, when the guy was saying, as we said before, saying prayers for his life and had a fever of over 104 degrees. And, was literally praying to not be taken. Freddie Freeman, who is now playing, by the way, he didn't opt out, but a guy who's in great shape, elite athlete. And, it had him on the verge. So, but yes, I do think there is that chance where if no one does get seriously decimated by this thing, that, some people will be like, oh, well, Young people are fine. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky, and I guess so. What is the Marlins aren't playing for a week, and then I know the Phillies and Yankees all like also canceled their 3-game series, so
Yeah.
it might just be kind of a mishmash at the end of the year. Like some teams somehow played 60, some teams played 48 games. I mean, who the hell knows?
It's weird, and sort of, there were rule changes that there's so much to talk about this week. And you've heard about the rule changes elsewhere, I'm sure, too, if you're listening to this. But it's kind of why I'm okay. I was okay with basically any rule change for this year. The problem is I hate the expanded playoffs if they keep them going forward, and I feel like no team has ever given away a literal dollar. And if it is more money, they'll do it. And then there's just no reason to have a 162 game season if you're talking about 8 teams in each league in the playoffs. So that sucks. I don't mind the expanded playoffs for this year. I mean, I'd still rather not have them, but I don't mind. I get it. I just don't want that going forward.
I think that's a lot of people's concerns is like, it is good for this year, but once you've opened up that can of worms, can you close it again?
Yeah. Yeah, I would love a weird chaotic playoff this year. If we get that far, that'll be awesome. That'll feel like a huge bonus.
Yeah. So as far as other baseball stuff is concerned, besides the Marlins, Joe Kelly.
Yeah, Joe Kelly wants that smoke.
Nice swing, bitch.
Nice swing, bitch is such. I mean, put it on a t-shirt. It is so basic. It's such like a basic dummy meathead burn. I love it. It is so great. Do you want to tell people what that was basically?
Well, the Astros are playing the Dodgers in Houston, and as you may know, there's a tiny bit of bad blood between those two teams for reasons that should be obvious. And Joe Kelly was getting chippy. I'm sure he hasn't admitted to throwing at Bregman, but on a 3-0 pitch, he threw the ball basically behind Bregman's head. It was pretty frightening. Like I hate the Astros, but I'm not cool with throwing that high to somebody's face. And then yawned like a murderer. He threw a ball like 100 miles an hour.
He yawned like a murderer. Also, what people should know is that Joe Kelly was not on the Dodgers team that got cheated.
It's very much like Sean Estes having to hit Roger Clemens way back in the day.
Yeah,
like you weren't even a part of this.
No, but I mean, we've heard from a lot of players who've spoken out that this was not what the Astros did was not garden variety cheating. Everyone's looking to get an edge. Everyone does something. Basically, every other player we've heard talk about is like, what the fuck about the Astros, and that everyone believes what they did was beyond the pale. And so I think players are just genuinely furious with the Astros in general, even if they weren't on the team that got specifically cheated in that moment. So yeah, Joe Kelly was just throwing at dudes and still, held on to the lead, by the way.
Right. And I think he struck out Carlos Correa and then yelled, nice swing, bitch, at Correa.
Yeah, and then made a frowny face at him, like a boo-hoo face on the way out.
Wah.
Yeah.
It was kind of like the thing that Chapman did to the Cubs, where it's like a very dismissive, like, brushing off of like, yeah, fuck you guys.
Yeah. Right. Back in 2014.
In his Reds days, yeah.
Yeah. But it was, I mean, to me, it was good entertainment. I loved it. I'm watching all the clips. John Boy's going to have a great breakdown of all this. I'm sure it's already up on Twitter, but yeah.
Although his lip reading is going to be severely impeded by the mask wearing.
That's true. That is one of the unforeseen obstacles of this year. But it's great stuff. I mean, fuck the Astros. They're unrepentant cheaters. They're, Bregman's a guy who always has something to say, and I often agree with what he has to say, but he got real quiet as soon as the cheating came out. Then it was Mr. Politician answers. So they're a bunch of cheaters, and obviously, in a literal sense, that sounds like such a cavalier, like, you're cheaters. They're actual cheaters, and they benefited from it, and they weren't repentant about it. So yeah,
they weren't repentant, and they also weren't punished. And when you don't punish somebody adequately, other people are going to take that into their own hands. And again, no matter how shitty the Astros are, I still think it's a dick move to throw high when you're throwing 100 miles an hour that could kill somebody or end their career. like hit them in the ass. You're a professional pitcher. You can make that happen, or hit them in the back or whatever. But
although Joe Kelly did point to his viral video where he threw the ball
the
through
window.
his own window and said, I don't have control, which is also a funny excuse to be like, I'm kind of bad. Sorry, is like a funny thing. And god dang, it's funny to say nice swing, bitch. And my God, if fans are ever allowed back in stadiums, is Carlos Correa going to hear nice swing, bitch for the rest of his life? That is great.
I certainly hope the folks at Obvious Shirts, even though they are more Cubs themed, jump on that opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what their rules are about working blue, like about profanity, but yeah, otherwise that's that t-shirt's getting made somewhere for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Were there any, were there any other just baseball at large stories that caught you this week in particular?
I was bummed at how Ohtani's first start went. I was really actively looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's a bummer to see. And he's a guy who has needed a longer ramp up, and it makes sense because he has to ramp up 2 different players for himself, basically. So hopefully that's all it is. And Shohei Ohtani and Craig Kimbrell both coming around would significantly improve my enjoyment of baseball, because I would love to see the two-way promise of Ohtani actually happen. But yeah, pitching wise, the velocity wasn't there, the stuff wasn't there. He didn't record an out, and that sucked.
Yeah. I also enjoyed that tweet from the Rays on opening day that was like, holy shit, this is really from the Rays account.
Yeah.
It was like, today is opening day, which makes it a great day to arrest the cops that killed Breonna Taylor. And when I first saw it from the Rays account, I was like, oh, is this one of those things where someone like changes their Twitter handle to Tampa Bay Rays, but it's not actually them? And then I clicked on it and I was like, oh shit. Okay. Rays.
Yeah. Rays actually saying something. And I guess that takes us to maybe to a less fun topic for as Cubs fans, I think a little bit too, because on opening day, most teams did some gesture in support of Black Lives Matter. We saw BLM on a number of fields. The Cubs wore Black Lives Matter shirts while they worked out. No one kneeled on the Cubs. I don't believe there were people who kneeled on plenty of other teams, but the Cubs did not. Maybe one of the worst reactions to the support of Black Lives Matter across the league was Kyle Schwarber. I thought Kyle Schwarber wore a CPD hat with his Black Lives Matter. He wore a police officer, the Chicago Police Department. He wore basically a cop's hat while wearing the Black Lives Matter shirt. And we know Kyle Schwarber has the charities that he has a charity that supports police officers and I believe also firefighters and other it's like a community heroes thing. And Kyle Schwarber made a very deliberate choice to not wear a firefighter's hat that day on the one day when everyone is coming together in standing in support of Black Lives Matter. Would you know who didn't have a problem doing that league-wide? NASCAR drivers. Every single NASCAR driver at the top series, at the top level of the Cup Series. You know who didn't have a problem? I mean, the English Premier League, the soccer teams, not just on their first game back. By the way, a league that just finished their season and had no problems with COVID, basically, in a country that was also hit extremely hard. Every team was kneeling before kickoff in support of Black Lives Matter. And Kyle Schwarber couldn't go one fucking day without putting on a cop hat when everyone else is standing in support of a movement that in part calls attention to a disproportionate amount of unpunished violence by police officers against people of color. Kyle Schwarber could have worn a firefighter's hat if he needed to do something else besides support Black Lives Matter in that moment, but he didn't. And he's never said anything on social media in support of Black Lives Matter either. Nothing that I've seen, at least, nothing on his Twitter since all this happened. And we love baseball. We love our Cubs. But I think we can't be people who give a free pass to people just because they're on our team. either. And the most angry I've been, the most disappointed I've been by anyone this season was Kyle Schwarber in that moment.
Yeah, it just speaks to a tone deafness that's really hard to justify, because it really wouldn't have been that hard to just not wear that hat.
No, it's an aggressive, deliberate choice.
It also is an ugly hat. He looks like a stripper.
He
looks like a male stripper.
He looks like a hot cop from Arrested Development. Yeah, he looked like shit. And the specifically wearing that hat on that day means he's wearing it because he thinks the other thing he's doing is attacking what his hat is. You know, there's no reason to wear something that has a police department's logo on it on that day, unless you think you have to do it because just standing in support of Black Lives Matter is too much for you. Like you feel like you have to counteract that in some way. Wear your cop hat the next day, Kyle. But he didn't do that. He did it on that day. Extremely deliberate choice.
Yeah, and I guess you have to hope that it's ignorance or a lack of intelligence, but it still doesn't make it any easier to stomach when you want to root for a guy. And look, I'm not when he's up there. I'm still rooting for him to do well at the plate. It's not going to diminish my love for him that dates back to when we first saw him play for the Cubs. But
it does diminish my love for him. I'll say it diminishes it. I still root for him, and I think we know him to be like the rest of what we know about him is he seems to be a very good guy. Otherwise, yeah.
I guess I'll rephrase that. I guess what I'm saying is it doesn't in the way that like now when I see a clip of Addison Russell hitting a grand slam, it like makes me ill to look at.
Yeah.
Because I know what was actually going on at that time. Yeah. I feel like, and maybe this is wrong, I can still look at Schwarber highlights and just appreciate them for the baseball highlights that they are without getting too bogged down in how disappointed I am with him in this moment. But yeah, I mean, I think anybody, and I know there was an issue with Souza a couple months ago, and again, I think it just for any of these people, it speaks to a real lack of awareness of what the actual like fundamental issues are, that you think those two things are at odds, that you think it's like, oh, I have to choose a side, or like, Black Lives Matter threatens blue lives matter, which again, like
there's no blue life
there. Yeah. Like I can understand the ideology around saying all lives matter, even though I disagree with the sentiment of it. I can understand why people say that more than somebody saying blue lives matter, because it's not even in the same conversation.
No, it's disappointing. And also this would have been a nice time for the Cubs have a lot of good beat writers, and I don't know how they all could have whiffed it on this, because I would like to hear what Kyle Schwarber has to say about this. I want to hear, because I would like to give him a chance to speak about it. But it seems like he said everything he wanted to say, and our reporters didn't follow up. From our @Away Games Pod Twitter, I tagged, I tagged Sahadev, and I tagged John Greenberg, tagged Gordon Wittenmeyer, I think. Someone should have asked about this, and it's a bummer that the Cubs reporters all whiffed on it too.
Yeah, and as we've said before, it seems like the atmosphere in the Cubs clubhouse right now is very good, which is great, and I think that's been like kind of a hallmark of this group of guys. But yeah. I mean, look, if I'm Jason Hayward and I'm walking past Schwarber in the outfield and I see that, I'm gonna feel some type of way about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a white guy who has had all the privileges that come along with that my whole life, and I feel some type of way about it. You know what I mean? Like. So it's been such a fun week, and it's like none of us wants to spend too much time, I think, talking about that. But I also think that is, when we said we weren't math guys, this is a thing that our podcast will address. This is a pro player podcast. It's a podcast that believes Black Lives Matter. These are, and that the content of the people we root for matters. That is a thing that I think you and I both believe, and we have to. And so I want to hold our players accountable too. I don't want to be the meathead who is like, if our guy was on any other team, we'd talk a bunch of shit about to that team and their fans and not call out our own guys. So it was just a real bummer on what was otherwise a great opening day.
Yeah. You got anything else before we wrap up here?
No, let's just look forward into this week. What do we?
Well, yeah, we used to do like a prediction for the coming week, but I feel like it never quite worked out for us. I think maybe we don't do that this year. I don't know. Yeah, I'm afraid to
predict the next week. Yeah. I mean, one thing that I guess it's tough for the team's physical energy, maybe, but the Cubs don't have a day off for a while, which I love from a viewing perspective. They're not.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah, they're not off till August 10th. So. The Cubs are they're playing in Cincinnati tomorrow night, then series in Pittsburgh, and then a 2-2 home and home. Not that home and away really matter anymore, with Kansas City. That'll be.
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm immediately going to contradict myself, but when I just look at the next week of games, like potentially if we record next, Tuesday night or Wednesday morning, we'll have played 7 more games between now and then. 2 more at Cincinnati, 3 at Pittsburgh, and 2 at Kansas City or versus Kansas City by that point. You'd love to see like a 5-2 in that stretch and just really keep things going.
You gotta, it's the Cubs play in a tough division, and this is a soft stretch. So
it's a very soft stretch followed by a very difficult stretch, because after that home and away against KC, you have the Cardinals, Indians, Brewers, and Cardinals again, and then the White Sox. So that's like 12 to 15 games immediately after that like you'd love to bank some right now, because then if you play 500 in that stretch, you're probably still doing okay.
Yes, exactly. So this is a week to keep the foot on the gas and to keep let's keep this just to keep this rotation going. It looks so good right now. If you can straighten out and everyone can. People don't have to be throwing 5 no-hit innings and 9 shutout innings for it to be good enough. But you got to be really encouraged by the rotation and the offense coming around here. It's fun to have baseball back, man.
It is very fun to have baseball back. And if somehow you're still listening to this an hour in and you don't know that we have done this, check out our interview with Alec Mills. Very talented starter from last night. His demeanor is exactly what you would think it would be based on how he is on the mound, which is just like very like even keeled. And I think Len actually pointed that out last night. It's like you would never guess that this guy has as little major league experience as he does.
No,
by the way he carries himself.
Yeah, and I think Len also referred to him as a finesse pitcher, and JD said, I don't think I can call him that because he strikes out too many guys. Like, even if he doesn't throw hard, and that's a good point, more than a strikeout inning in his career. But yeah, we interviewed Alec Mills and a bunch of other Cubs and former Cubs. So if you want to check that out, you can find all the links to all those interviews at Away Games Pod on Twitter. And they're just, subscribe to the podcast. They're all right here. They're all beneath what you just saw downloaded. So do that. And if you like what you're hearing, give us a rating and a review. We would love it if you could do that.
Yeah, I think that's all I got.
Sweet. At Away Games Pod everywhere. Thanks for listening to everybody. Catch you next week.